And hello again, and welcome to another session of the 14th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. You probably know by now I'm Bob Ailes. I'm your moderator for the session. All of our sessions are, of course, closed caption. Simply click on the closed caption icon on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen, then live transcription. All of the sessions the recordings will be available usually within an hour after the last session of the day. And you'll know it's available because instead of seeing the join session link, you'll see view recording. And don't forget, you all have access to our library of session recordings from the past 13 years. Now we've got over 600 recordings there. Um, on the top menu, just click on the link that says Sessions Library, and then you can search by a keyword. Well, as you see, our session today is academic support through badging and asynchronous instruction. We have our presenters, Stacy Blackwell uh, from Rutgers University. Uh, she's now the Senior Director of the Learning Centers. Woohoo! And is on the Student Success Steering Committee and on the editorial board of the Learning Assistance Review. And we have Lucille Leung. Did I pronounce that right, Lucille?
Close
Close?
enough. Leon, close enough.
Okay. She's currently a doctoral candidate at the Graduate School of Education in Education, Cultural, and Society at Rutgers. Lucille oversees academic coaching and workshops at the learning centers, and she also teaches a pedagogy course required for all first semester learning assistants in methods of inquiry for the School of Engineering. Yeah, man, you keep busy. So, without further ado, let me turn it over to Lucille and Stacy.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your introduction, Bob. And just to give a little bit more background, Lucille and I both work at the Learning Centers. We support over 300 peer leaders, a team of part-time academic coaches, and we have 4 physical centers on our campus. And so what we're here to talk to you about today is I want to call it a solution, though sometimes I feel like anything in education we call a solution is overselling to a degree. But we have a really interesting new project that we were working on where we realized that we have a huge campus. We have a lot of students who come to us voluntarily for support with academic coaching. So that's skills coaching essentially. And while we're reaching a really large number of them, there obviously is always a population we're not reaching. So we've been continuously thinking about different ways to reach them and to get this sort of information and these skills out to students. And what we started doing through the pandemic, which was ironic because we had planned it prior, but as many things, as COVID-19 hit and we went to remote instruction, it kind of accelerated the plans we already had in motion. So we launched this new project where we created online learning modules that are self-paced and self-graded as well. And that's important, which you'll learn as we move forward. And we wanted to see how we could launch these in a way that would really enable them to be distributed widely across campus. And I think we found a pretty effective way for doing that. And so today we're going to share with you sort of the process and the content and how we managed to overcome some of the obstacles that we originally had found when we started conceptualizing this idea. So I will turn it over to Lucille to introduce herself and also to get us kicked off on the presentation.
Thank you, Stacy. Like Stacy was saying, we launched in the fall of 2020. So as you all know, the pandemic hit during the spring of 2020. So we were thinking, what can we do during the fall semester once we realized that we were going to be fully remote that semester to really help reach more students, and then also really try to solve the problem of teaching students how to succeed in online courses, since many of them weren't used to that. So that's how it originated. So our first launch for an academic coaching module was titled How to Succeed in an Online Course. And we ended up issuing about 6,000 badges for that first semester. And then over the course of 3 semesters, we've issued over 13,000 badges for that one. After the creation of that one for that semester, we thought to take it further, and why not turn some of our academic coaching workshops into modules as well. So we launched time management next, and in the spring of 2021, and we issued about 800 badges over the course of 2 semesters. And last semester, we just launched one working with the Office of Student Conduct on academic integrity. And we issued over 700 badges last semester for that one.
So to give you a little idea of the learning centers and the context in which this was happening, as I mentioned, we have 4 physical centers, but we also have a variety of programs. So we really focus on the idea that with learning assistance and academic support, we can create small communities of learners. They're generally led by highly trained peer leaders, so students who are teaching students. And the goal is really to complement the instruction that's happening in the courses with active and collaborative learning activities. And this is sometimes individual and one-on-one meetings and sometimes in small groups. And we also support faculty who are looking to enhance their instruction. So they're looking to add things to their courses to help students build their skills. They're looking to add more individualized or small group instruction. And we have supports like embedded tutoring in the learning assistance program that helps them to do that. So we currently offer tutoring on a drop-in basis. We also have one-on-one writing tutoring. We have study groups. We have in-class support. We have, as I mentioned, academic coaching and academic workshops. And that's what these modules were based off of, with some of our academic workshops. And then we also do peer leader training and development for a variety of groups around campus that offer tutoring as well. And our physical spaces, we offer study spaces. And just to give some context, all of our services except for academic coaching are peer-led, because academic coaching, we believe, requires a degree of expertise and education and learning theory. And also all of our services are free. So that kind of gives a little bit of a landscape of the learning centers in which these things are being offered. But the idea here is you see all of our services, it's all very real-time interactive with students meeting with students meeting with coaches. And obviously, as we went into the pandemic, that got a lot more difficult for a variety of reasons. And we also know that there are students, particularly students who weren't necessarily on campus or only had limited time to be on campus, that we may not be reaching with all of these things. So our constant question is sort of, how do we continue to provide high quality supports where we can still offer students some interaction, some feedback on what they're doing, but also do this in a way that can be much bigger than the very small team that we've had for a while, and that we can actually offer more support to students even when we can't necessarily increase the hours of the real-time individual services that we're offering.
So I think we've mentioned this a little bit, but just to talk a little bit more about what academic coaching is for us, it entails helping students with basically their self-management skills. So whether that's time management, learning new study strategies, reading strategies, problem-solving skills, test taking. We offer them in multiple different formats. So we have one-on-one appointments, which most of our appointments are one-on-one. Students can sign up for one-on-one appointments. Right now, they can sign up either to meet in person with an academic coach or online. We also conduct group workshops. We have a number of different series that we offer every semester that are open to all students on campus. And then we also take requests. So whether those requests are from other departments, other programs, sororities and fraternities, residence halls, a number of different classes also request us to come in. And then the last format that we use are small group peer coaching. So it's capped at 6 students. And the whole goal of that is for students to really be able to help each other through these topics. So a lot of this right now we're offering peer coaching in person. We found that a lot of students actually didn't want to meet on Zoom specifically for peer coaching, even if they did for one-on-one appointments. So it always used to be kind of a live synchronous setting in person, or, you know, starting during the pandemic, we would do through Zoom appointments, but we never had an asynchronous kind of type of academic coaching support. So this was the first time where they can actually access some support without meeting, you know, in a live setting with an academic coach. Just to kind of give you a little context about, you know, how many students we serve on a regular basis. This is from academic year 19 to 20. So it was, you know, I would say mostly pre-pandemic. So just to give you a glimpse, because we did have a drop in synchronous sessions, which we'll talk about after this. So in a typical year, we would have about 2,500 workshop participants through about 300 workshops given. And this was all through 8 part-time academic coaches. We would also serve over 350 students a year through individual appointments. And the number of individual appointments we had academic year 19 to 20 was over 1,700. So that's because a lot of students came back more than one time. Some would meet weekly, others would come like maybe twice and then stop coming. It depends on their needs, right? So if they just wanted to meet with an academic coach for one specific thing, they might come like 1 or 2 times and then not need anyone anymore. And then we had other students who felt like they wanted more support. So they wanted to sign up for weekly or bi-weekly appointments. And just to give you a scope of things, we have over 50,000 students at Rutgers, New Brunswick. So I believe we served a little around 3% for the academic coaching program, but the learning centers overall served over 50% of the undergraduate population. Stacy, I think you can give us more details to those numbers, right? Am I?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, I'm here. So we do serve, so you're absolutely right, you have the numbers right. But when we're looking at the undergrad population, what's interesting when you look at our numbers is that services like tutoring and academic coaching, first of all, they're all voluntary, right? So when students are coming to use the services, it's completely voluntary. And then we also have our in-class services where we embed students, tutors, learning assistants back into the classroom. So the students that we're serving, we're looking at many who are using services voluntarily, some that aren't, they're just kind of in the class and the learning assistants are in the class and they're interacting with them. But coaching has been, you know, a little bit of a challenge to scale up because it's such an intensive type of program, right? That there's a lot of sort of foundational knowledge to build. There's a lot of one-on-one diagnosing what's going on with a student and that sort of thing. And so we're going to talk in a couple minutes about the conceptual piece behind this and why the asynchronous sessions or the asynchronous modules really helped us to kind of build the program a little bit more and maintain some of our, excuse me, some of our sort of resiliency during the pandemic when that really intensive kind of relationship building coaching wasn't as available as it normally would be.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, we had a significant drop in synchronous sessions during the start of the pandemic. If you take a look at the numbers here. In 2018 and 19, we were getting around 700 to 1,000 visits for the spring. And then in the fall semester, we had over 2,500 visits for each semester. And this is specifically only for workshops. So we had over 2,500 visits for workshops. And then in 2020, that dropped to about 800. So from 1,000 to 800 for the spring, it started dropping, and we decided to do the asynchronous modules. As you can see, in fall 2020, when we launched that, we were able to reach over 6,500 students through the asynchronous module, How to Succeed in Online course. And we still had about 800 for our synchronous workshops. In the spring of 2021, so the second semester after the pandemic, we reached about 2,000 students for the asynchronous. Overall, our services tend to be more underutilized in the spring semester than the fall, just for academic coaching specifically. And I think that's because in the fall semester, we work with a lot of first semester freshman students. So first year programs and things like that, new student orientation. So we always, every year we always see a little less in the spring than the fall. But that number for the synchronous workshops did drop still to 400. Last fall, we were again almost able to reach 6,500 students for the asynchronous modules again. And that's through 3 modules. And then the synchronous again was only 493 students for synchronous workshops. So we did have, a significant drop since the start of the pandemic in students who were choosing to come to our live workshops, whether they were online through Zoom or in person starting last semester. But we were getting more and more students for the asynchronous and able to go at your own pace, kind of like come back to it, come back to material and be able to review it on their own. And they always had the option of actually meeting with a one-on-one coach after doing an asynchronous module. So for example, for our time management module, which we'll talk about a little bit more during this presentation, but a lot of students, they would complete the time management module, and then they have an option of submitting their own time management plan and reviewing it with an academic coach. So we always had that option of them signing up for one-on-one sessions as well, if they wanted to.
Okay, so to give a little bit of a background of the project, we have been conceptualizing asynchronous self-paced learning modules for several years and had gone back and forth with ideas about quality, which I think is a thing that we always consider, when we're removing that in-person interaction element, we always want to think about what that means in terms of the student's learning experience. And then we also were really thinking about, once we build the thing, how do you distribute it? And I think that's some of the questions I'm seeing coming in the chat, which we're going to explain in great detail. But basically, we needed to come up with something that would at least give students feedback, right? So we didn't want to just have video recordings and just have them sort of watch something and then check off saying that they did that. We actually needed some type of comprehension check. And so we had just really thought through what this was going to look like. It obviously was expedited by the move to remote instruction for the reasons that we mentioned, but also because all of a sudden there's this huge need for students to get some of the basics of how you even operate in an online course. And so we went from our original thought, which was, we have a lot of students who are coming in for the same topics all the time, and our coaches are doing a lot of foundational work. Why don't we move some of that online? And then when they come and meet with the coaches, they can really dig in and they can get into the more personalized stuff. So that was sort of our original intention behind these. But with remote instruction, then we realized, there's also kind of this need to be able to distribute this type of instruction broadly and quickly. And so that also sort of helped us to rethink the modules too and think about another benefit that they could bring. So in order to do that, we needed a widely used platform. And for our campus, that was Canvas. And so instead of sort of bringing in something that was a third party that students would have to learn or go to a different website to find, we said, we're just going to stick with Canvas. They're in it already. That's where they're going for their courses. And we can make this really nicely integrated with what they're already doing. And, you know, our objective was to really help students just get started with these skills, but then also to direct them to services. So one of the challenges you run into at a really large campus like we have is that no matter how many times you think you've communicated a message, students still don't know you exist, right? So they still don't know where to go and find support when they need it, because maybe they heard about it in orientation and now it's 2 years later. They're not thinking about the learning centers because they may not have heard about them for a while. So being able to sort of have this in the courses was really key to us being able to distribute it and also get the word out there about the services that students have available to them. So that was also sort of a second objective, was also to make sure that they knew the services that they could come to and that they could use, and to sort of say, hey, we're still here to support you through remote instruction as well. Go ahead, Lucille.
Yeah, so creating the asynchronous modules, definitely, you know, our goal was to solve certain problems. And those included accountability. So having students being able to demonstrate some sort of understanding of the modules that they took. So we created quizzes within the Canvas modules. So then every time they reviewed and learned a certain portion of the module, they would be able to take a quiz on it. So they actually had to receive 100 on each of the quizzes in order to earn their badge. And they could retake the quiz as many times as they needed to. Also, another problem that we aimed to solve was distribution. So it was easier for professors and other programs to share through Canvas Commons and add it to their own Canvas course site. They could make it, part of their course, or they can make it kind of like a voluntary thing, depending on what they wanted to do. A lot of courses ended up requiring it, a completion of either the time management module, and where students had to just submit their badge to them. So that's how it easily got distributed. It was also on Sakai, so students were also able to access it through, if their students used Sakai. Right now, we actually fully moved to Canvas, so they're not going to be able to use Sakai anymore. And another problem, a huge problem, was Zoom fatigue. So, we probably all experienced this since throughout the course of the pandemic, and students were experiencing this as well. They didn't want to meet on Zoom anymore. If their classes were on Zoom already, they didn't want to necessarily meet with an academic coach or attend an academic coaching workshop on Zoom when they were, fatigued by being on Zoom all day. So this was a way to kind of avoid that a little bit, and have give them the opportunity to be able to complete a module on their own pace, come back to it when they're tired from being on the computer too long. And another piece to that was the timing. So being at their own pace, they were able to kind of complete it whenever they had time. We did have students a lot during the pandemic who were in other countries. So with different time zones, and even attending classes at like 3 o'clock in the morning, because that's what time it was for them overseas. So these really try to aim at solving those types of problems for students.
So as we worked through, some of the challenges that we had, and then also looking at the benefits that we were trying to get out of this was the format we came up with. And it's pretty straightforward, but there definitely are certain things that we learned that I think will be helpful. So the first thing was that instead of creating, as some of you may know if you're familiar with Canvas or Blackboard, you can create certain things that can be exported into other courses. And in Canvas, that's called Canvas Commons, is where they hold all of that. And so at first we were thinking, we could make this module, we could put it in Canvas Commons, I'm sorry, and instructors could just put that in their course. We actually decided against that because what would happen then is we would lose control of it. So we wouldn't know what students were using it. If we ever wanted to update or make fixes, we really wouldn't be able to do it because once it gets copied into an instructor's course, that's it, it's theirs. So what we decided to do instead was to create independent Canvas courses for each topic. So we have what is essentially a time management course. We have a how to succeed in online courses course. Then what we put in Canvas Commons, and I'm going to show you this in a moment, was a module that instructors could import into their course that instead of having all of the content we were trying to teach, it had instructions for the instructors. And then it had just an assignment. And the assignment was basically just instructions for the students on how to access our course, and then once they complete the course, they are issued a badge through Credly, to answer that question. And then for the instructors, for the assignment in the course that they're taking this for, all they had to do was share the URL to their badge because Credly allows for independent URLs for each badge. So all the instructors were importing into their course was the instructions that were for them, that we encourage them to remain unpublished. It was just for them. And then the assignment for students, and they could publish that assignment, they could change the number of points, and they could change the due date as they wanted. And so in order to do that, it just made it so that we can always update the course, we can always fix errors, we still have full control of what the students are actually engaging with. And for the instructors, it was just a matter of importing, changing the details of the assignment, and that was it. It also was pretty easy to grade because all they're doing is clicking on a URL, seeing that the student's name and the badge is there, and that's it. They don't have to do any checking to make sure there's comprehension and all of that. And in Canvas with Credly, we were able to automatically set up the badges. So students had to complete quizzes, and upon completion of the quizzes, those badges were automatically issued. So obviously we had to do some support when badges didn't work. We'll talk about that in a minute. And that sort of thing, but we weren't sort of consistently going in and grading or doing anything like that. It was all automated. Go ahead, Lucille. So this is what the Canvas Commons looks like for faculty. So when they go in to set up their course, basically they just search for time management. It comes up like this. As you can see, there's really under the module, under the preview, there's really only those two things, just the assignment and the instructions. And on the right side, you can also see that all they have to do is click, can you go back? All they have to do is click import or download, choose the course that they're importing it to, and it makes it really easy. It also has that copy resource link on the right side. And so that enabled us to send messages out to faculty and just say, hey, if you want it, here it is. Make it really easy. There's no searching or anything. They just have the direct link to this, and then they can import it on their own. Go ahead, Lisa. The other thing that's really nice about Canvas Commons, I should say, is it also shows you how many times things are downloaded. So it was nice that we could see the footprint and how many people were using it. So obviously the key pieces of this were Canvas and badging. So that's the Canvas piece, and now we get to the badging. Some of the benefits, as I mentioned, is that we can continuously update content, that our campus partners really didn't have to do too much other than just check that the URLs were there. But the other huge benefit here, and this is why we started doing badging in the first place, was that students only have to complete this once. So we really wanted to make sure that students got it, but then that also meant that they might be in two classes where their faculty members both want them to complete this. So in order to address that, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little echo. So in order to address that, we would just have the badges so that students could submit the same badge to multiple courses, show that they did it, and that was it. So it was really minimal setup, and the students also had the benefit of sharing through LinkedIn or sharing on their resume. We'll talk about how much they use that later on, but that was one more benefit that was there. One of the huge challenges we had, and for those of you who are thinking about doing this and giving you the heads up now, Credly particularly, and a lot of systems like this are linked to emails. And if your institution is like ours, you may have more than one email for students. That created a challenge in the beginning. So for example, at Rutgers, they have a particular email, but then they have an alias that they can use that's shorter and easier to remember. And so some of the students were actually not completely aware of how the alias and the original email works, and they didn't know which one was in Canvas. So they would sign up for Credly with one email and Canvas was using the other one, and then they would complain to us that they didn't get their badge. So we were able to figure that out and fix that pretty quickly by just explaining very clearly on our Canvas site to say, this is the email you have to use, here's where you can go in your Canvas account to find which email it is. But that alignment was a really big piece of the puzzle here. And so that was one thing that once we addressed it proactively, it really wasn't a problem anymore. But before we addressed it proactively like that, we did have some challenges with students not being able to get their badges. And then of course, the other issue here is that as much as we believe in collaborative learning and in that interaction and the relationship building and coaching, there's not really the ability to build that when you're distributing something at this scale. So again, these modules really aren't meant to take the place of academic coaching, but they are meant to reach the students who can't get academic coaching at all in a live environment, and also to kind of set the foundation, make sure that they have the basic tools, the basic skills, and then they can dig into them more with a coach. But there really at this scale isn't a whole lot of interaction. So one of the ways that we addressed that was that in the quizzes, we made sure in Canvas, you can always have a response. And I believe this is the same in Blackboard and Sakai and everything. So if students got a wrong answer or a right answer, they would have an explanation for why it was wrong or right. So at least they got some feedback on their responses, even if they didn't get sort of a live person grading. Go ahead, Lucille.
Right. We also, just to add to that real quick, we also tried using, some new, I guess, websites for that, like Nearpods, to make it more interactive. Some of the issues with behind, Nearpods or PlayPosit, or that they would like expire after a year. I think I just realized today that some of our Nearpods expired. So we have to like redo them, which is, one of the issues for that.
Yeah, and then, so just on the note of distribution, I think often we say, okay, it's great, we can build it, but will they come? And in this case, they did. We did have a huge number of students use our modules, especially the first semester when we were really trying to get that How to Succeed in Online Learning module out there. So a few ways that we marketed this was that it was included in new student orientation. So the nice thing is that if students did what they were expected to do, all new students had already done this module before they even stepped foot in their first online course. And then the instructors, if they wanted to make sure the students had done it, it didn't matter because they had already done it, they had their badge, they just submit the URL a second time. So it was really easy for students, but it also gave them a chance to do this before they actually had to navigate an online course. We also have a thing, we have the thing called My Rutgers, which is sort of the students' home base online. And they have to go through a checklist after orientation. So it was on that checklist to make sure they did it. We had our campus partners distributing it widely. We sent it out to the listserv for our particular school, which is Rutgers, New Brunswick. The Student Association was really excited to help us. They put it on all their social media. We used it, put it on our social media. And then to distribute to faculty who might want to put it in their courses, we sent it out through the undergraduate deans and our regular newsletter. And we really got a tremendous amount of support from the deans and department chairs to the point where we were still building it and I let it slip that we were building it and we were getting people saying, when's it ready? Are we going to get it? So it was a really positive response. And I think from the perspective of an academic support professional, having this kind of service that you can offer, right? When there's a challenge or there was something going on at the moment that deans, students, everyone saw as a challenge, like these students don't really know how to do online learning yet. For us to be able to say, okay, well, here's a thing we can offer to help with that, and to be able to distribute it like this was really just a huge value add. So for us as an academic support service, I think it's important to also see that, this is one more opportunity to kind of demonstrate the worth and the value of having services like these on campus. Uh-huh.
Okay, so at this time, if you can all use the chat, and if you want to talk a little bit about what you feel some benefits are and drawbacks to asynchronous instruction. Okay, so we have being more flexible. They're definitely more flexible for students, like we talked about. Questions aren't answered as they come in, and if it's time sensitive, it could pose a problem. Yes, definitely. That's what we did always have it available, that they can meet with a one-on-one coach if they do have any questions. But yes, sometimes they weren't able to get those appointments right away when they needed them. So thank you for that, Roberta. Lack of engagement. Yes, definitely. We're still working, like I said, on trying to find more ways for students to be more engaged with the material through asynchronous instruction. So finding those things like having the videos interactive where they can kind of pause and then respond to questions on Nearpod, or post in discussion forums, things like that. Working at their own pace and getting more retention of what is learned versus being on a tight schedule to complete. Yes, definitely. Yeah, being able to go back to that material, I think definitely helps a lot. A lot of the times, students come in for workshops, and then that's why they want to make the one-on-one appointments after, because we're kind of jam packing everything within an hour and 20-minute time frame. And they're not constrained to that time for asynchronous instruction. Lack of collaboration, ability to revisit the content as many times as you want. Yeah, so definitely a definite drawback. I agree with you, Paulina, that having a lack of collaboration can definitely be a drawback to asynchronous instruction. That's definitely one benefit to our group workshops, where we can have them engage in group activities, group discussion. Even if we're on Zoom, we can do breakout rooms and have them engage with each other. So, we're still trying to figure out more ways to have them engage and collaborate with one another. Patricia, what do you mean by there must be an end date? Okay. Yeah, they do. Yeah, we do open them and close them for each semester. But yeah, it is available to everyone. Right now we're kind of every semester we're kind of going through, pulling the data, and then putting students in a section as inactive for previous semesters, and kind of labeling them into their own section so that it doesn't build up too much. Sometimes when we go to a grade book and we're trying to, troubleshoot a student not getting their badge, it kind of Canvas might take forever to load. We have right now at this point for some of our modules, like how to succeed in an online course, there's like over 10,000 badges that we've issued. So if all of that were to populate at once, we would be sitting there for a really long time trying to wait for the page to load in order to troubleshoot. So we have been moving them into their own sections every semester. So it'll be labeled like section, fall 2021. And then this semester will be spring 2022, so that it kind of clears that space up a little bit and we're able to load it again. Yeah, but I'm also stunned. We're actually, we did issue over 13,000 badges for how to succeed in an online module so far. All right, well, thank you. Stacy will go back and talk more about assessment.
Yeah, so we just had a question about assessment. So that was a great lead in from the chat. Thank you for that. Yeah, so to give an idea of assessment, so Canvas does have a nice analytics piece where you can look at, how long it takes students to finish, their engagement with it, how many times they revisit, and that kind of thing. We also exported all the student data into our student data system that we have at the Learning Center. So we were able to look at their demographics, their courses. I mean, we have a pretty robust system here, so we could see a lot of that. So a little sort of snapshot of what one of these looks like. This was from the first year of How to Succeed in Online Courses. And so basically, we did have 8,007 students in just that first year. And when we look at the completion rate, it was 84%, which is not too bad for asynchronous module, and then 87% partial completion rate. And we did notice that assignments that were later in the course had a lower completion rate. So there were some fall offs after quizzes 1, 2, and before quiz 3. I think that's expected of anything online. But our completion rate really wasn't bad, especially considering that this was, a minor assignment in a course or not an assignment at all for some students. It was just something that they were encouraged to do through new student orientation. Out of those, there were really only 117 that used the badges on LinkedIn, 66 in the newsfeed, and 3 on Facebook. So one of the things we learned through this is that the students don't seem to see a lot of value in the badges themselves. I don't think that really surprised us. It wasn't really a big goal of ours for them to be using them as these sort of professional development types of badges on LinkedIn. Our goal was really to find something that would practically enable us to demonstrate completion internally. So we're really looking at the badges more internally than anything. But this kind of reaffirmed what we were expecting. And just to give an idea of the demographics, we did see a larger number of first-year students than anything else, which is not surprising because we did it through new student orientation. But we did still see a good number of second-year students with 1,283. And then for anyone beyond second year, it was 1,108 total. Non-traditional students, we saw 207. So we were a little bit underrepresented there with the non-traditional student population from our Rutgers, New Brunswick population. And same thing with international students. We were a little bit underrepresented, but I will say international students also have a mandatory first year course. So they already had sort of a large support network involved there. So we did survey students and we had 627 responses with that year. And, as you might expect, there were mixed results. This was mandated for a lot of students. And I think whenever we see something as mandated and extra, we certainly have a different slant to the responses, but we did use their feedback to make some changes and got some really good feedback on the changes that were made. And we got some really good ideas from the students and from the surveys. So I believe Lucille's going to share those in a minute, just to give some idea about if you're going to design something like this, some of the things to keep in mind.
So one of the questions that we asked students after completing the module was we basically did a Likert scale asking them how they felt about the statement that completing the How to Succeed in an Online Course module helped them succeed in their classes that semester. So as you can see, majority did not disagree, but there were definitely some skewed results. And we did find that that was probably because a lot of them were kind of required to take the module, whether through a class or through new student orientation as well. So we did have some mixed results there. And then also some students, for this specific module, probably knew a lot of the content than other students might not have. So depending on their kind of experience with taking online courses, some students were more experienced having taken some and others haven't been. So we did also find, based off of those results, some mixed responses to this question. What was really useful to us was kind of like the open-ended answers that we got for how the module could have been more helpful to them. So we did use some of this feedback and we were able to make some modifications for the next semester or the next year. So just taking a look at some of this feedback, let's see if it showed more about the apps that we'll use for class. So kind of they wanted to know more about navigating Canvas and Sakai. They wanted more videos and less of the reading part. So, you know, they wanted more visuals, right? So we did make a few modifications for that, adding in some more videos for them, always providing transcripts, of course, so that they would have a little less text to read through the modules. Interactive elements, of course, you all mentioned that as a drawback to asynchronous instruction. So that's what we really tried to work on, especially with the new modules. So for time management, like I said, we tried to experiment with using Nearpod and some other tools as well, to try to make it a little more engaging for the students. Some just left that it was helpful to them, and others felt that it wasn't as helpful. They said, don't make it mandatory for classes. Let's see. I think a lot of students definitely mentioned about wanting it to be a little more engaging. Other students, I see someone wrote that they wanted more strategies. So that's kind of what led us to creating other modules as well, because we weren't able to fit everything into one module that we wanted to share with students. So, you know, the biggest need for academic coaching is always time management. So more students come to us for time management than anything else. The second one is study strategies. So we were launching we did launch the time management module as well. And we're currently working on our study strategies one. Okay, so I guess in the chat, again, if you want to share a little bit about what some ideas you all have about self-paced asynchronous modules that you might want to create at your institutions, and how would you make your module more interactive for students? I'd love to hear from all of you.
I think in the interest of time, so if we can let people share their ideas so that we have it recorded for everyone to kind of review what everyone else is thinking, but we're running a little short on time. So should we move on and let people share with each other?
Yeah, let's do that. And I'll respond to the chat as we go. We'll both respond to the chat. Okay, so just taking a look at our module content. These are the badges, glimpses of what the badges look like. We had our support from the university to create the badges and keep them consistent. So we kind of built upon existing materials to create the module content. So we already had a lot of materials on these topics, and we wanted to just make it into the asynchronous portion. We tried to make as many interactive components as possible. We would use the academic coaches. They would work on making videos, researching content, testing the module and quizzes, offering feedback. They're really taking the lead there. A lot of times we will pull from like YouTube videos as well if there's already something good out there. But a lot of times I had them make their own videos because we did find areas that were lacking. The Canvas self-graded quizzes, once you completed each portion of the module, you can kind of mark it for completion. And then the quizzes are graded automatically, so you don't have to do anything there. The time management module, like I said before, opted for an optional submission for review through a one-on-one live session. So some students did utilize that, whereas others didn't. So this is just a glimpse of what the modules look like, some of the headings that we had for how to succeed in online courses, our time management module. We did have a cover page, so students aren't going to actually see this, but this is just to show you all what a glimpse of what it looked like. And here on our left is the academic integrity one. And on the right here is unpublished, what we're working on for our study strategies module. And other than the study strategies module, we're also working on a note-taking and metacognition one. So those are the 3 modules that we plan to launch next, hopefully by the fall semester. And we're also looking to do some more assessment, not just having a feedback survey, but maybe utilizing some other study skills assessments, looking into maybe using Lassie and other tests, or maybe creating ones on our own. We also want to look into making it a tiered badging system. So once they completed a certain amount of badges, maybe they'll earn like this kind of master learner. We haven't really thought about the titles yet, but something to signify that they've completed X amount of badges. And another thing that we were looking towards doing perhaps in the future is also launching for outside institutions. Through Campus Commons, we would be able to do that as well.
And if I can just add just one note here too on the assessment. So we've done some really interesting assessments with our academic coaching program. Lucille's actually done conference presentations and everything on them, where we look at behavior change as an assessment. So that's another thing that we're looking at is, is there an actual behavior change when students go through a module like this? We've done that with our in-person workshops. So that's something that we can look at here too. But I also wanted to just note, another thing to think about in terms of the usefulness. We did actually launch the academic integrity module this year. And it was really interesting because I think it gave us an opportunity to get the message out there to students that they don't often hear about academic integrity. And it was one of the things that we saw a lot of value to, which we were really intentional about not taking a punitive approach to it, right? And to talking about just what is integrity and what does it mean to be a student who's displaying academic integrity, and to really sort of flip the script, because I think a lot of students don't think about that thing until they're already in trouble. And so we were able to get that out to faculty as well, and to say, here's some messaging. And I think that there's a really big value here to being able to also sort of help create campus-wide messaging around things that can be really positive and really constructive, and can be really student-focused. And to have that sort of distributed widely, to me, was a really big value add to doing a project like this. So I just wanted to kind of make that note, because I think it's something that is a little bit less tangible, but really important to think about when thinking about the value of something like this on campus. All right.
Right, so I guess that's the end of our presentation. I think there's maybe a minute, depending on what Bob says, for questions, a few minutes before the next presentation.
Oh, we have time if there are questions.
And I mean, these are our email addresses if you have any other questions going forward. Does anyone have any questions?
This was really excellent. Thank you. We're looking at just what we've been talking about doing badges for a while now, just before the pandemic hit, and kind of had to hit the pause button. But this is very timely at our institution. We still have to choose our platform, and we're at step 1. So, but this is very helpful. Thank you.
Great. And what institution are you at, Tex?
I'm at Gannon University in Pennsylvania, and we have had some interest from different offices to do something very similar to what you presented today. So they'll be excited to hear about another institution is doing that. My involvement is in how we can start to do more with credentialing at the graduate level, and potentially get into not for credit offerings where they can earn badges and whatever the hot topics are. But we're just starting out. We do have a couple master's programs and 2 certificates where the program directors are interested in launching. So just trying to understand what makes up badging to begin with.
Yeah. So Tex, if I can just make a note on that, because I'm actually on a committee at Rutgers right now that's kind of asking some of the same questions. I would say one thing that's a little bit of a challenge is that badges like this are really intended to be internal, right? But then you have those external like credentialing badges and things. So just, you've probably already thought about this, but when you're looking at the programs that are out there, there are some that have like the tiered levels or ways to kind of divide them so it becomes more clear that, you know, this is considered like a credential and something you would put on a resume, and this is just something like we're using at the learning centers, it's for tracking, right? And there are actually some programs out there, I forget which ones off the top of my head because we're looking at a very long list, but that do have that capability to kind of divide them and categorize them, and that might be really valuable moving forward, so that there's no confusion about like what the badge actually mean, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I was wondering about that earlier when you were presenting, because I'm thinking, well, if they were also doing it within the academic departments, are they all using Credly? And if not, what do they use? So do you have multiple platforms at your institution for this sort of thing?
Yes, so that's the thing we're working on now. I think you are too. You know, so we were very careful moving forward about how the communication around all this happened with the badges for us at the learning centers, and that the visual identity even was like very much aligned with the learning centers and didn't look like a badge that, you know, some type of credential from a school that's more like a professional type of credential, but it's certainly something that we're looking at too. And, you know, I think that there are some platforms out there that have nice options for clearly communicating the difference between the two types of badges.
Gotcha.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, that's enormously helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, thank you everyone for attending our presentation.
Hey, and Stacy and Lucille, thank you. This was very helpful, just as Tex said. So
Thank you all
it's
for being
lunchtime for me, and my dogs are telling me they're hungry too. So we're going to take a break for an hour, then we'll be back with our 3 afternoon sessions.